You are listening to Survival Stories with Jacqui. Welcome, survival warriors. If you are a victim or survivor of trauma, then you're in the right place. In this show, we'll explore the extreme strength displayed by victims of trauma as they journey through life to the survival pinnacle. My name is Jacqui, and I am so grateful to be here today to share my survival with you. Here is this survival story. Let's dig deep. Hello again, survival warriors, and here we are with me. And I do have another friend, and this time my friend is Adrienne, and she has a fabulous middle name, Moxie.
Indeed.
I've been stuck on it ever since I found it out. So Adrienne has had her share of traumas in her life, and she has led an exceptional journey to the point of survival where she is today. So let's start by asking her, what makes her such a happy soul today? What makes her feel like there's reason to live? And so without more ado, I will put you over to Adrienne. Good morning.
Good morning. I know it's not morning where you are, but I appreciate the effort. So yeah, what brings me so much joy? I think it's just recognizing that I'm in charge of my joy and that no one else gets to decide if I feel joy or not. And so it's just a choice to feel joy. I've, learned to be loyal to my own joy over the years and to not let anything or anyone pull me off of that. And so that's why I'm a joyful person now, because I can be.
That is an exceptional joy, really. I know it's still using the same word, but having reason to be, reason to say,
Yeah.
Choice, reason. That's such an underestimated thing nowadays. People don't realize there's people out there who actually don't get a choice and who just have to be whatever they're told to accept. So brilliant. Love it. Let's continue. What I want to ask you is, was it always this way, or was there a point in which you would question yourself more? What was your darkest point in your journey?
Yeah. So there was absolutely a point where I lost track of me completely. I recall a moment where, so I was in this terribly emotionally abusive and sometimes physically abusive relationship, and largely sexually abusive relationship as well. And there was a moment where I looked in the mirror and I just didn't recognize me. I remember looking in the mirror and thinking, who is that sad sack of a person looking back at me, And I was so angry at her, this victim who was like staring at me in this mirror. And I just wanted to smash it. I had that urge to just like throw something at it. But even that just felt like
powerful when that happens, because
right.
It's like a recognition that something needs to change.
Yeah. Like I just wanted to destroy her. And, my husband at the time was doing a pretty good job of that on his own. He kept waking me up in the middle of the night and asking me, telling me, give me 3 good reasons not to kill you right now. And that's a really hard thing to do in the middle of the night when you're really out of it. It's hard enough to kind of come up with 3 reasons why your life is worth living in any circumstances, but under those circumstances, it just sort of felt like this impossible task.
But to have your husband ask you that question, that must have been soul destroying.
It was soul destroying. And especially because after a while, I didn't have good answers. I really felt like, why am I here? What is my worth? What do I contribute to the world, aside from appeasing this man? you know? And those were usually the answers that I gave, is that I did these things for him. You know, give me 3 good reasons not to kill you. Oh, well, I shave your head every day, and I make your dinner. And, you know, I mean, just stupid, stupid, pointless stuff, but little stuff that I did for him that I felt like, well, this is why you shouldn't kill me, because I'm nice to you. And I think at the time I really mixed up good and nice. You know, people who were nice to me, I appreciated, but I didn't understand kindness or respect on a deeper level. And over time, I started to see the difference between someone being nice and someone being kind.
But you would lose your connection to kindness and respect, because you weren't being shown kindness or respect.
That's exactly right.
You know, so, you know, even if you're brought up with it, it's who you spend your time with that, you know, you tend to adopt their habits.
You really do.
Live that way. I mean, when you wake up, you just about realise what time of day it is without somebody saying, why shouldn't I kill you?
Right.
You know, I'd fail that every time, because I spend a good few minutes trying to work out where I am, you know.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah. And inevitably, I eventually couldn't come up with good reasons. I came up with a reason that really made him mad, and he decided to put a pillow over my face. Every time he would ask this question, he would have the pillow in his hands. And I sort of thought that it was just dramatics. You know, I didn't think that he would actually go through with it. Well, shows what I knew. He went ahead and put the pillow on my face. And, you know, in that moment, you have all these things go through your head, you know, in moments like that. But it's funny how sometimes if you can just allow it to happen, it's like something comes through you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like someone is channeling, or something is channeling through you. And if you can just let that happen, sometimes you can save your own life. And that's exactly what happened to me.
That's quite, I think that would need a real, another level of strength to be able to think that laterally at that time.
And again, I don't think I was. That's the funny thing, you know. I mean, I was so scattered in most of my thoughts at that time in my life that the clarity that came to me in that moment, again, I don't even credit myself with. It was like, it just, there was some connection within me to something beyond myself. That's the only way I can really explain it. That I was able at that moment to tap into something that was larger than me, into a strength that was all of ours. It's like the birthright of everyone. You know what I'm saying?
Can we just unpick this a little bit more? I understand what you're saying at that point, mm-hmm. But did anything else happen to take you to the point where you would accept that? You know, and I'm not saying you accepted it. I'm saying, but you didn't leave, you know, sort of get up the next morning and go. Yeah. What happened up to that point for it to get to that point?
I always describe it, you know, like the frog in boiling water. It happens very slowly, and it happens over a long period of time. It was about 2 years of ramping up to this point. And what it was just little disrespect moments, little moments of him pushing my boundary and me making excuses or justifying and accepting that behavior for whatever reason. And sometimes it was circumstantial, where I'd say, oh, well, you know, he's acting like this because he's so stressed out, or he's acting like this because he's so afraid of losing me. You know, I would come up with these reasons or excuses or rationalizations for the way he was acting, and I would contextualize it in a way that I could accept.
Sure.
And so because of that, it was just like little by little by little, I lost ground, to the point where I just had no sense. I was completely at sea. You know, I had lost my sense of values, my sense of boundaries. Everything that kind of made me was gone to me. He was my only kind of touch point of reality after a while, because he completely isolated me from everyone and everything else that I had always counted on to kind of help me figure out, what's good, what's bad, what's up, what's down. Do you know what I'm saying?
Do you know, did you ever stop loving him while he was doing that? Or did you still consider yourself in love with him while that was happening?
That's a hard question to answer. I don't think
I'm so sorry.
I don't think I even asked myself that. I don't think it even, I didn't allow myself to even question my love for him, because the idea that I would have fallen out of love with him was so scary to me. Because first of all, it felt very disloyal. I would feel like, a bad person that I had stopped loving him. And second of all, how scary that, if he treats me like this when I'm on his side, what's he going to treat me like when I'm no longer on his side? What's he going to do to me when I become his enemy?
No, it's interesting that you should say that, to pose that rhetorical question, because it's funny how many women actually reason in that way,
Yeah.
and it doesn't lead to anywhere good. But
no.
we are sort of naturally prone as reasoners, to say, what would happen if I do this? What would happen if I don't, if I'm not nice to him? And I say that because in my own case, where my father was sexually abusing me for 9 years, during that 9 years, I still got up at 5 o'clock every morning and made him a cup of coffee to try and, in some way, make him like me.
Yeah, to appease. Mm-hmm.
We don't. It's not rational.
No.
What we do.
But there's so much fear. We are in such a place of total fear. Fear controls us at a certain point, because when you have had some really, really, really terrible things happen to you, and happen to you over and over again, and feel completely powerless to stop those things from happening, yeah, you start to walk on eggshells. You start to live in this place of, how do I prevent this pain? And that's really the primary force in your life. How do I prevent this pain from recurring? Sure. And you try everything. You try absolutely everything to prevent that pain from recurring. And nothing works. Nothing works. The only thing that works is getting away from the source of that pain. But that seems even more terrifying in the moment.
So was your self-esteem affected to that level?
Oh, are you kidding? I mean, it was destroyed. It was completely destroyed. I hated myself. Like I said, when I looked at myself in the mirror, it was like I wanted to spit at myself. I wanted to throw something at that reflection. I hated her. She was this pathetic, downtrodden victim, and I didn't want anything to do with her.
We're going to take this on to how you started to mend, but I want to understand how your friends were feeling seeing you disappear along this road.
Well, and that's the interesting thing. So abusers are very good at isolating people from their support system. Mm-hmm. And so, first of all, we had moved away from anyone that I knew. We were in California. I was in graduate school. And I had managed to make some, friendships, relationships there, but I didn't get to spend a lot of time with them because he insisted that as soon as I was done with school, I had to come right home. He knew my schedule. And, I had to check in. I was like, this was Gestapo, If he had had the technology, I'm sure he would have put a tracker on my phone. But instead, I just did it for him. I would call him and say, okay, I'm done with this class. I have to do this and this, and then I will, come right home. And if it took longer than I had told him, oh my gosh, I was going to be berated for hours. And so I didn't have much of an opportunity to create real friendships in that time in my life.
Sure.
The only person that I really got close to was my office mate, Elizabeth Hess. And she was an absolute angel. She was such a lifesaver in so many ways. And she ultimately is the one who helped get me out of that situation. But at first, what she would do was just give me these kind of sanity checks. Like he would come, looking for me, and he would say, where's my wife? And he would like bang on the door, and she'd come and be like, she's not here right now. I was in there, but she's like, she's not here right now. She's probably at the library. Is there something I can help you with? And he'd just kind of grumble and leave. And she would come in and kind of give me this look like, that's weird, right? Your husband isn't supposed to treat you like that, right? And I'd just be like, oh, well, he's an acquired taste. Haha. Right? Trying to make jokes about it. But at the same time, she's kind of looking at me like, that's not funny. That's not funny, right?
Yeah.
And so little by little, she kind of brought me back to myself by just making me realize this is not normal. This is not how normal people live. And this is not how you're supposed to be treated by your husband.
Okay, Adrienne, we're going to go for a break.
Okay.
I want you to really tell us when we get back, what was your, just explain to us when your friend was saying, this is not normal. What about that was normal for you?
Hi there. I'm Audrey Ann, and I'm the author of Melting Ivory. Life happens for you, not to you. It's available on Amazon, in Kindle, and in paperback. So, Melting Ivory is a lot of things. It's a memoir, first and foremost. It is the true story of what happened when I went to West Africa to study theater on a Fulbright scholarship. It's also a cross-cultural Sturm und Drang romance. And there's a bit of a thriller element to it, too. Even true crime, some might say. There's also an aspect of an abusive relationship survival guide in there. It's definitely an action-adventure. But above all, it's a coming-of-age tale. Melting Ivory is the story of how I became the person that I am today. And it's, I hope, inspirational to those of you who are coming through a similar situation. So I hope you'll pick it up, and I hope you'll review it. Thanks.
So we are back. And Adrienne is now going to explain to us, in that state of mind, what did she consider to be normal? Over to you, Adrienne.
I considered it normal at that time to be controlled. And in fact, I think there was a part of me who found that comforting. That I thought that this person, because my life had been so out of control for so long. I was molested when I was 4, actually by a woman who was living in our house. And I learned from that experience, not consciously, of course, but I learned from that experience that my job in the world was to make people happy, to give people pleasure, whatever that meant, no matter how disgusting or painful or strange I found their requests. I felt that it was my duty to give them whatever they asked, and that was what made me lovable, and that was what made me a good person. Now, I didn't unpack that for years, but because of that, I had no boundaries. I mean, I had absolutely no boundaries in my life. And I did all kinds of things that I was really not proud of, and that put me in some really dangerous and, unfortunate situations. And so I think there was a part of me that had so much shame just around the way that around that lack of boundaries for myself, that I felt like, well, maybe this person can give me boundaries. Maybe this person can control me. Maybe this person can finally make me normal. And so I accepted these rules and this kind of structure that he put onto my life, partly because I was afraid of myself. And so when I say, when she said, well, this is not normal, I mean, to me, it was like, well, what is normal? Because I have no I have no basis of comparison for that. I have no examples in my life of what a real normal relationship even looks like or is supposed to be like. And so I really felt very lost. I felt very, very lost at that time as to what I should and shouldn't accept or put up with, and what kind of boundaries I should set for myself and how to defend them. I just had no experience in any of that.
I completely understand that, because there'd been nothing there before, you know, so, you know, you were learning about yourself really, but he manipulated that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and took advantage of that. Absolutely.
That's just wicked.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
You know, it's something that I can't comprehend. If you can see somebody's vulnerable, why on earth would you do this? That's a question out there that I would want people to think about. Why would you take somebody's vulnerability and smash them to pieces with it instead of trying to build them up, especially after you've married them? Sorry, Adrienne.
I really think part of it is just the patterns that he grew up with too. That was his normal. The situation that he had growing up is that his, father had 2 wives and didn't treat either of them very well, and would constantly pit them against each other, in terms of jealousy and petty rivalry and things. And that was how he sort of maintained his sense of power and his sense of self-esteem. And so I think that's, again, the message that he got growing up is that you have to control women to be powerful. And here's how to control them. You make them feel like they're worthless without your attention and your approval.
Not something that works for me, I'm afraid.
No.
No. I understand when people say that's the way I was brought up, but I'm a firm believer that you're not with your parents now, so you have the ability, to actually make your mind up about right and wrong.
Yes.
So whilst I have a certain level of sympathy for seeing those messages whilst you're growing up, you should know.
And to be clear, I do not find that an excuse.
No. I'm completely behind you. I'm your leader right now.
Mm-hmm. It's just that's, when you ask the question of like, why do people do these things? They're not doing it consciously. They're not. They're just not fixing an unconscious pattern that they're allowing to play out. And it takes real effort to recognize those patterns and to change them. We know that. You and I, we know that. It takes work. You have to recognize this pattern and then decide, okay, I'm going to rewire my brain to have a new response to this stimuli. And that takes a lot of work. And most people are not up to that challenge. They're not. They just find people who will play out this pattern with them over and over again because that's what they know and that's what they do just naturally. And so that's what feels natural and normal to them. Yeah. And I have no doubt that's still what he's doing. Is playing out that pattern with somebody else.
To a large extent, it's not just still what he's doing. It's probably what he'll do for the rest of his life.
That's exactly
right. Because there's never a shortage of women with vulnerability issues. And
Absolutely.
Never a shortage of people who are willing to take advantage of them. And that is a really sad fact. No matter what narrative is out there in the world about be kind, it never quite gets there, leaving us to struggle to find our way forward. So tell me, how did you start to find your way forward?
Well, the first thing I had to do was leave, which was really hard. And as I said, my friend Elizabeth really really saved me. But it was me allowing her to do that really pulled me out. Because the thing is, people can try to save you all day, every day. But if you're not ready to be saved, it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. You're just going to go right back. And so the mind shift for me of recognizing I don't have to live like this, and I don't want to live like this. And that doesn't make me a bad person. Making a new choice doesn't make me a bad and disloyal person. It means I'm being loyal to me, finally. And so that shift, I think, was the first step. Just recognizing that I not only have the power, but I have the responsibility to take care of myself and to create a life that I'm happy with and I'm proud of. To become the person that I want to be and that I like to be around. You know, I think part of the difficulty in getting out of this is that fear of being alone with the person that you've become.
Yeah.
And so it really does take a concerted effort to start loving yourself exactly where you are, because that's the thing. You can only start from where you are. You can't love yourself as you will be an hour from now or a year from now.
And it's
you
not
can only
journey either.
That's right. It takes a radical leap to love you exactly as you are, hot mess that you are. It takes a radical leap. But once you can do that, once you really can just accept and love yourself exactly where you're at, they have no power over you.
Can you remember the first time you defended yourself? Your heart was like...
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Every time I felt like throwing up, you know? And because, you know, there are always times when you finally have had it and you stand up for yourself. And then they smack you back down again. Every time, because they're really, really good at that. And so, you know, one of the pieces of advice that I always give is, you know, you get to this point where you're ready to kind of fight what I call your big boss battle. So in video game parlance, there's the big boss battle where you get to the end of a level and you have to fight the big boss of that level, right? And you have to stand up for yourself and say, no, I'm not going to take this anymore. And, you know, you train and you fight. And it usually takes several tries because it's really, really hard. It is hard by design.
Yes.
But once you fight that battle, you level up. And now leveling up doesn't mean that things get easier. Actually, the entire world gets a little more challenging when you level up. But you have all these new abilities and you have all this new power. And so you can face up to those challenges and enjoy this new level. So the thing is, people think, okay, I have to fight my boss battle. So they're ready to fight. But the irony is, the way to fight a boss battle with an abuser is to leave the situation and not even allow them access to you anymore, because they control all the rules of the game. They control everything. And so you have to decide to get off the playing field to win.
They're strong. One of their strongest tools is that gaslighting one, where you start doubting yourself.
Yes. And believe me, I was so upside down. I mean, he did things like, for example, I was writing a letter to a friend of mine. It was a male friend, but just a friend. And he was having a really hard time. He'd been having some personal struggles and he didn't want anyone else to know about them. So he specifically asked me, please don't tell anyone what's going on. And so here's my husband demanding to know what this letter says. And I'm saying, I'm sorry, I can't tell you, but I promise you it's nothing to do with me. It's all about him and what's going on in his life. Well, he absolutely couldn't accept that. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, he kept harassing me to give him this letter, and I kept hiding it in different places. Mm-hmm. And finally, I put it between the mattress and the box spring of the bed. And one day he was like, hey, have you seen the scissors? And I was like, no. He said, that's weird. Can't find them anywhere. So that night I reached down between the mattress and the box spring to get this letter. And it's the scissors. And so it's just little weird dramas like that he would play out just to fuck with my head. just to make me feel like I was going nuts. And a lot of it wasn't even that obvious, it was much more subtle. Little things like, he would say something to me, and 5 minutes later, I'd, ask him about it. And he's like, I never said that. Why would I say that? That's not even something I would say. Oh yeah. Just absolute crazy making where you're like, okay, maybe this is all in my head. And so there was a moment where it started to turn around because I had a friend come over and I was going to go and spend the night at her house. Now, I had never done this. The entire time that we'd been married, I'd never slept anywhere but with him. And so this was a huge deal to me. And I just screwed up my courage. And I told him, hey, I'm going to go spend the night at my friend Heather's house. And I mean, the look on his face, like, no, of course you're not doing that. Like, what's wrong with you? Why would you even suggest such a thing? So it turns into a fight and he's yelling and he threw a book at me and I ducked and it hit the wall. And I'm thinking to myself, now Heather is standing right outside. So she must have heard that book hit the wall. And she certainly hears him screaming at me. Now he's screaming at me in French, but she can still kind of figure out what's going on. And he doesn't know that she's outside. And so again, I just get this kind of boldness and I walk outside and he follows me and he's screaming at me, in French, don't you ever come back here. If you ever come back here, I'm going to kill you and I'm going to kill your Hi, Heather. How are you? Gosh, you look nice. I mean, it was like that. And she, had the wherewithal to kind of play along and go, oh, hey, how are you? It's good to see you, and then like, let's go. And so we got in the car and I was like, I'm so sorry about that. And she looks at me and she says, don't you dare apologize for him. You are not responsible for his behavior. And I, that was a big like, oh, I'm not. And then, just realizing like, wow, that happened. She saw that. I have a witness. So this kind of thing happens to me. For real, it's not, it's not all in my head. He's wrong when he says that this is all in my head. It really happens. Mm-hmm. And he's doing it on purpose. And I know that sounds so sad and painful and obvious to those of you listening, but if you've ever been in that situation, you know that they really are good at making you doubt your own reality and your own mind. And so that moment was huge for me. I think that probably was the biggest turning point in terms of my willingness to leave. Was just recognizing.
I'm so grateful that it came because that would have driven you nuts forever if you hadn't had that strength.
Well, I would have died. I mean, I absolutely would have died. I would have allowed him to kill me is what would have happened. If that hadn't happened, I hadn't, there was like the series of events, of other people realizing what was going on and helping me out. And thankfully, by that time, the time that he put the pillow over my face, I already knew that Elizabeth was working on a plan to get me out. And so I had that strength in me because it wasn't just me anymore. I had a team. I had people counting on me to get myself out of this. And I think a lot of the women that you see who don't make it out, they don't have that. They don't have that support system. They've been completely cut off.
Yeah, it's important to have somebody to listen to you, even though did you have that feeling of like shame that things had gotten like this and you didn't want anyone to know, and in your heart you know you're strong enough, but you're not strong. You're not strong. And you need to have that support to actually know, if I fall down, someone's going to help me back up again.
And that was why I apologized to her, because I genuinely felt responsible for everything that was happening. I thought it was all my fault, that I had created all of this and I was a bad person. And so I deserved this. I had so much shame around it. I was so embarrassed. And so having her respond like that was everything. was absolutely everything. And she said something else to me. She said, yeah, they're often very charming in public. And it was the fact that she used the word they. She had categorized him in a group of people who behave like this, abusers. And it was having someone else categorize him in that way that helped me to realize, oh, yes, this is not normal. This is not okay. He's not treating me well. And it's not just acceptable, it's the right thing to do to protect me. Absolutely. Because I am the vulnerable person in this situation. And, a lot of women, they have children in these situations. And it's often recognizing I have to protect these children that helps them to leave. And I think in that moment, I recognized my own inner child was being abused in this situation. The most vulnerable part of me was being taken advantage of and harmed over and over by this person on purpose.
Yes. And
I recognized finally that it was up to me to protect her and to get her out of there.
Let's have a break then.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Hi, this is Jacqui, and you've been listening to one of my friends tell their stories today. I invite my friends to tell their stories to help you heal. If you do have any trauma or any difficulties that you think we could help you with, please visit my website, jacquiandfriends.com, and leave a message or contact me, and I'll be happy to connect you with either today's friend or anyone else who you've listened to or watched who you think might be able to help you further. Or if you just want to talk to me, that's great too. And we're back. And I don't know about you, but I think that Adrienne is definitely one of the strongest women I have known, because her story has so many turns in it. And she was at her weakest, but decided to rebuild her life, which she's going to tell us about now, the steps that she took.
Yeah. So one of the first steps actually happened that night, which is, so my husband had been blackmailing me. He had some information about my life and some choices that I had made that I was really not proud of. And he kept threatening to tell my mother, who I really didn't want to know these things about me. But that night I decided to come clean to my mom on my own terms. And so I called her up, at Heather's house, and I just told her absolutely everything that I had ever done wrong in my entire life. And you know what? She's my mom. And she accepted me, and she said, I still love you. And so the truth really did set me free. And so that was the first step for me, I think, of dealing with that shame and healing that shame, was to just really come clean to the people who mattered to me in my life, whose opinion I actually cared about. And from there, like I said, I allowed Elizabeth to help me up and out of that situation. I got away from him. I had my own space and my own place. And I started seeing a counselor. And I had a couple of tries, actually. I went to a couple of different counselors before I found the one that really jibed with me. And I really recommend that. Shop around a little bit. Don't just take the first person that you find if it's not working for you.
Yeah.
Find someone that really, really has the tools that help you to help yourself. Because the bottom line, that's all a therapist can really do, is give you tools to do the work for yourself. Because nobody can fix you. Nobody can fix you. It's all you.
That's such an important message there. You are responsible for you.
Yeah.
It's all about you.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, on you go.
Yeah. So I got this kind of tool belt of tools, and some of them were tools to deal with PTSD, because of course I was suffering from a lot of post-traumatic stress. Mm-hmm. I was in a rebound relationship, which was a complete disaster, of course. And every time he would raise his hand, just casually, I would duck and cover. And, it became this kind of running joke between the two of us, but it really wasn't funny. and it was very sad and very weird for both of us. And so I really think having that tool set was huge. And one of the tools that it gave me was when you start to feel, afraid, just literally check in and say, am I in physical danger right now? Am I in physical danger right now? If I am, I need to get out of here. It is my responsibility to get myself out of this situation if I'm in any kind of physical danger. If not, then try to bring yourself back into present time. And how I would do that is I would look at things in the room and I would tell a little story about them. I would bring myself back into the room by describing what I'm seeing in the room as if I'm a narrator, narrating my own life. This worked really well for me as a storyteller, but I know other people have different ways of doing this. Sometimes they count things, like count everything in the room that's red, count everything in the room that's green. Anything that just gets you focusing externally on what you can see around you in this moment is really, really helpful. Another tool that I learned during this time is self-compassion. And that was probably the biggest one, actually, is just hearing my own self-talk and speaking back to it, not in a confrontational way, but just in a way of like, if someone was talking to a friend of mine like that, how would I defend them?
Yeah.
And how would I speak to that friend to help them deal with what they have just heard? How would I build them up again? And so just being really aware of my own self-talk and having a lot of compassion for myself and speaking to myself kindly, speaking to myself with acceptance.
Yes.
Again, that radical self-acceptance of just, you're exactly where you are and that's exactly where you're supposed to be. And everything that happened for you, not to you. And so this is exactly who you're supposed to be right now, and you're perfect. You're perfect just the way you are, and you're going to keep getting even better.
I like it.
And again, gratitude. Gratitude is huge. Just being able to be grateful for the things that I did have and to focus on what was going right in my life, to focus on the good things about myself and the things that I wanted to be more. Integrity became a huge thing for me during that time in my life. Authenticity, being honest, because I realized that I had been a compulsive liar for a lot of my life because it was a safety mechanism. I felt I had to lie to people so that they would like me, so that they wouldn't hurt me.
Yeah, and that's a biggie to actually say,
Yeah.
Okay, that's what was actually
Huge.
happening.
Yeah. And I would make these agreements with people that I didn't really care about, but they were important to them. And so I would appease them by making this agreement with them. And then I would break it because it didn't really mean anything to me. And I hardly even remembered that it happened. And then, of course, they'd be furious with me. And I'd be like, what? Why? Why don't you like me anymore? I'm nice. And so in this time in my life, just getting incredibly rigorous with, little tiny things. I would tell my friends, oh, hey, just a minute ago, I told you that this happened on the bus. It didn't happen exactly that way. This is how it actually happened. And they're like, why are you telling us this? It really doesn't matter. But it mattered to me. It mattered to me to be just rigorously honest.
Yeah, it's because he spent so long saying, I'm going to tell your mom, that you are making sure there's nothing to tell.
That's right.
Ever.
Yeah, and also just getting rid of that shame of feeling like I was a dishonest person, to rebuild myself as an honest person and an authentic person with integrity was huge for me. And so if I made an agreement, I kept that agreement. If I set a boundary, I defended that boundary. And this was actually the hardest one to learn, was boundaries. You'd think that would be, the first place you start. It was kind of the end of the process for me because it was so hard for me, so ridiculously hard for me to have and, set healthy boundaries and defend them. What I found myself doing was I would say to people, hey, here's my boundary. Can you please keep this safe for me? So for example, someone would hit on me at work, right? And it would make me uncomfortable. and I would say, hey, that makes me uncomfortable. Can you please not do that again? So what I'm doing is telling them, okay, there's going to be no consequence if you continue to do this. So you have, you have free reign, basically. I'm just going to be a little bit sad. And so what I realized over time is that this was completely backwards, that my boundaries are my responsibility. And so what I would say to someone when they did something that crossed a boundary of mine is not, hey, can you please not do that again? That made me uncomfortable. It was, hey, that's a boundary for me. If you cross that again, here's the consequence that's going to happen. If you do that again, here's what I will do. And that's not an ultimatum, and that's not a threat. It's simply, this is how I defend my boundary. And so you get a freebie because you didn't know about it this time. But next time, here's what happens. And it was
the turnaround.
Incredibly effective. Oh my God, incredibly effective, right? Changed everything in my life. Just that, the power of being able to say, no, I will not accept that. And here's what will happen if you do it again. Was huge.
I love it.
Yeah. Because, you know, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else that you might not even know is an option yet. So you have to be very careful what you say yes to.
And you know where you have to accept, whether you like it or not. Not everybody will like you. And especially if you're just doing what they say, they're certainly not going to like you. So, you know, make choices. Those people who don't like you are not your people.
That's right.
So, you know, jog on, basically, and keep things moving.
Yeah. If everybody likes you, you are doing it wrong. Absolutely. And one of the biggest things I realized was that it was actually such a relief to have people start to opt out of my life and not have to spend the energy to appease these people that were not a good fit for me. And just watching them kind of drop off and going, ah.
So that is what I needed.
Yeah. It's like your garden weeds itself if you just put up the right fence. It's beautiful.
Well, Adrienne, you've had an amazing life. Not necessarily a happy one, but certainly amazing that you managed to get through it, rebuild yourself, and present like you are today. I'm amazed, and I am so grateful for you. And I love the light that you're shining on the world today. And you know, I could just sit here and listen to your story so much more because you tell it so well. But
thank you.
If you had one sentence which summed up your advice to somebody who's suffering the same life that you had, what would that be?
You are the author of your own story. And it is up to you to decide what happens next. It doesn't matter what happened before. You can always change the ending. You just have to start from right where you are and make a new choice and stick to it.
And if anyone wanted to contact you, is that possible?
Absolutely.
Apart from you can leave your comments in the comment boxes below, but over to you, Adrienne.
Absolutely. You can reach me at ADRIENNE at that's allowed, and it's spelled ALOUD.com. You can write me anytime.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today. But before you go, we're just going to shine the spotlight on you a little bit further, where I ask you a couple of fun facts. How many languages do you speak? Because I know you speak French.
I speak French. I speak a little bit of Swedish and a little bit of Italian, and English, obviously.
I've got a friend called Sabrina who speaks Italian. I love the way she tells her kids off, all that passion.
Basta, basta.
Chicken or fish?
Depends. I mean, if it's salmon, then fish.
Very much like me, actually. Do you believe in socks and sandals? And when I say sandals, I'm talking about sliders.
I know exactly what you mean. I mean, here's the thing. In theory, I'm opposed, but in practice, I've definitely done it. Hear me out. I have really stupidly sensitive feet, and I get blisters really easily, especially at the beginning of the season, when my feet are not quite used to wearing sandals yet. So I only do it around the house, but I definitely have done that just to get my feet used to sandals again.
Not on the street.
No, never on the street. Never on the street.
To petition, too many women are doing it on the street, and especially, could I just say, those sliders with the fluffy bits on them that look like baby.
Oh yeah.
What is that about? Stop now. And lastly, sparkling water or still?
I love a good sparkling water. I really do. Yeah.
Okay, you're forgiven the slider.
But it's gotta be mineral water though. It's gotta have a natural sparkle to it. That's the good stuff.
Well, thank you again, Survival Warriors. I will see you next episode. But in the meantime, this has been Jacqui and my friend Adrienne saying, see you next time. And there we have it, another empowering episode of Survival Stories. If you had something today that resonated with you, please reach out at jacquiandfriends.com and download our free PDF. Don't forget to head over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review and rating. And whilst you're online, why not join our community of warriors on Facebook at Survival with Jacqui. Look forward to seeing you there.